Laugh at me if you want to. I don't care. This is something shameless about myself. I love Hallmark Christmas movies. They bring me joy. I love that I can predict them. I love that within the first 5 minutes, I know who's going to fall in love, who's going to be heartbroken, like what the arc is going to be, what the struggle is going to be, who's going to run the hot chocolate stand at the Christmas fair. Like, you know what? It brings me joy.
Welcome to The Good Stuff, a podcast brought to you by The Good Word Co. This is your host, Caitlin Piggott.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Good Stuff, a podcast for anyone going through anything. This is your host, Caitlin Piggott, and this is a very exciting day. Some of you are watching this, and this is the first time we've recorded a full episode of The Good Stuff, so I'm really excited to get into this part of the podcasting space. I myself love to watch certain podcasts, so I knew that it was only a matter of time till I also needed to be doing that. So I'm really excited to be able to bring that to my audience and hopefully expand our audience. So yeah, I just feel like this is a really fun new venture to take within this project already. And I'm very excited. So I know that you all will give me the necessary grace as I figure this out, because obviously I'm sure that this setup will look different by the time we really get it perfected. But for now, I'm here on my couch. This is where I've been filming the last 4 or 5 episodes, just because I feel like it kind of helps me feel more comfortable. Therefore, I feel like I get into more vulnerable and open discussions on the podcast, which I feel like ends up translating into a better episode. I want this to feel like a place that is comfortable and warm and inviting and allows you to feel like you can also be vulnerable and open with your own thoughts and feelings. I've said since the beginning, I want this podcast to feel like we're having a conversation. I sometimes jokingly say the conversations you have with one of your friends on a Friday night after 3 cocktails, when you're just really being yourself and being free and letting yourself be free and thoughtful with your emotions. I don't drink before I record these, so don't worry. But I want that to be the feeling that you have. I want you to feel comfortable with me, and I want myself to feel comfortable. So that's kind of the thought process behind where I'm sitting to do this. If this is your first time watching or listening to an episode of The Good Stuff, this is a podcast where I kind of just work through thoughts and feelings and emotions that I think and know everyone goes through at some point. And so very intentionally, it's things that I want my audience to anyone who could listen to and feel like they relate to. I'm a 30-year-old woman, but the things I talk about, I know are relatable to all kinds of people, and I want it to be that way. I occasionally have guests if the word I'm discussing connects with their life in a meaningful way, and those guests are always people I know personally because I know their story and I know what they've been through, and so that's very purposeful. I never want a guest episode to feel like it has an awkward amount of surface level chatter at the beginning. That's something that as a consumer of podcasts, I don't love as much as when they finally get comfortable and get into the conversation. And so I very intentionally cut off that top part where it's hi, how are you? And you just feel like it's not a meaningful conversation. And so yeah, we get right into it when there's a guest. I actually have a guest episode coming up, so that will be fun. But yeah, so if this is your first time interacting with The Good Stuff, that's kind of what we're about here. I have over 30 episodes you can go listen to anywhere that you get podcasts that I think give colorful, good context to who I am as a person and kind of what I've maybe been through. I always, I've said, pick a word or a phrase because I want it to be that anyone can flip through my catalog of episodes and be oh yeah, I relate. I want every word to be relatable to every person, although the examples I give are going to be unique to my life experience and maybe some things that are unique to like I said, being a 30-year-old woman or having been a 20-year-old woman or whatever. But still leaving everyone an opportunity to reflect on how that word and like what that word means to their life and how maybe my experience can be mirrored in a way through their life as well. So I just wanted to give a little extra background to this episode since, like I said, hopefully there's more people seeing this because we now have it in video format, meaning hopefully we're reaching more people. I would do this if nobody listened, but I'm so happy that so many of you do. And so many people, like, I know, listen every single episode, and I really appreciate that. And it's fun to be able to like have conversations with people in my real life about it. Although sometimes a little like awkward and embarrassing, not embarrassing, but just like, oh, you are really listening. Okay. Because I do feel like I'm more honest on here sometimes, and even in like my normal life, I feel like probably some of my best friends like learn things about me. But like while listening to an episode, but nonetheless, I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that you're here if this is your first episode or if you've listened to every single one. So thank you again. This is like my favorite thing that I get to do. And it's really, I've become to really rely on it as an outlet for me as a creative person to kind of like scratch that itch. Most of my day, nearly all of my day, I run a business that is essentially a consulting agency for nonprofits. And so I am constantly pouring and putting effort and energy, obviously, into those very meaningful causes. But it's really fun to have somewhere that is like, feels like it's just for me and I get to express and feel and work through things. So that's what the good stuff is. And yeah, without further ado, I'm going to get into this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the word hope. And every episode, I give you guys kind of context into how I came up with a particular word or what in my life sparked it. I'm very famous for saying it's not like I have a bunch of these words like planned out well out in advance. I wait to get inspired in my own life. And then I kind of let the episode write itself from there. I'll jot things down. I came up with this word actually last week, which is rare. Normally it's like the day before I have to record that something finally hits me, but I've actually been like ruminating on this one for a little bit. And therefore I feel like I've seen it pop up in different places in the world, kind of like you buy a red car, you see red cars, kind of like that psychology of it. But yeah, it first started because last week I was writing a caption for one of my TikToks actually. And I said something like, aren't we so lucky to live in a world where we can hope? Meaning like every day we can like want and yearn and like hope for more. Or if we found ourselves in a bad situation, like we can hope for better. We can want for better. We can work for better. And aren't we lucky to have that opportunity? You know, there's even some people on this world who don't have the freedom to hope. They don't, for whatever reason, because of where they live or because they're under some sort of control. Like, how lucky are we as people who live where we do to be able to have hope and know and want for better? That's really something I think psychologically, I'm sure I won't speak to that because I have no basis for thinking that, just feeling it, but I'm sure there's a psychology to that and a science to the fact that like, you know, we can know that there is something more and we can want for that, and like the positive feeling that gives us, I'm sure helps us as people and helps us through hard times, and I just think it's kind of a fascinating thing to dive into. Now, if this is your first episode, or maybe even not your first, but if you are not an avid listener of the good stuff, you may not know where the concept of this podcast came from. And it actually came from a series I was already doing on my work Instagram where I would pick a word and write 300 to 400 words about that word and just express myself that way. And it was super engaging on my socials and it made me excited, and it was the thing that I did that most people cared about. And so when I was coming up with an idea for a podcast, I said, what if I just kind of did what is already working, just in this format, not the written format? What if I just like took the microphone to it? And hope, when I wrote this word down, it actually hit me today as I was prepping for the episode. Oh, I think I wrote about that. And I did. So I'm just going to read that to you right now because it fascinated me. And just know that this was like the last thing I did to prep for this episode. So everything that you hear me say as we work through this, like, was already written down, and I had already kind of jotted those things down before finding this excerpt, if you will. So I wrote this in May of 2022, which is obviously a while ago. And for further context, this is also where I came up with the title, the titling of these episodes, the Let's Talk About and then the word. It was started by this series on Instagram. It was the same thing. Let's talk about, and then I'd say the word. So this is Let's Talk About Hope. Again, from May 2022. And it reads, hope doesn't typically come up unless we or someone we know is in a dark place. It's a concept we cling to when things are hard. We don't have the tools for what's in front of us, so we find hope. Hope that something will change for the better so that this feeling doesn't stick around. I'm sure you can think of a time where you relied on hope to get you through something scary. I have hoped my grandfather's life-threatening surgery would turn out well. I have hoped that I would like one of the colleges I was accepted to as much as my dream school who rejected me. I have hoped that the pit in my stomach would go away someday after that first boy really broke my heart. I'm not a surgeon, so all I could do was hope. I am not on the admissions panel for that college, so all I could do was hope. I was not the one who wanted the relationship to end, so all I could do is hope. Right now, as a nation, we are in the search for some collective hope. 2 days ago, 19 innocent children and 2 innocent adults were murdered in a school. Children in the United States are required to attend school. We are the leader of the free world, and our most vulnerable population is not safe somewhere we demand they go. That should be a scary feeling. We should feel stuck in that. As people who are not in charge of these decisions, all we can do at this moment is to hope for a change. Hope is not passive. We can call our senators, sign petitions, and speak our minds. Once you find the strength, hope becomes actionable. This post might get more engagement than others because I'm mentioning a topical event, but let me assure you that's not the motivation for writing this. My words are simply the best way I know how to be involved in making something good happen. And then I list all the names of the students. I don't want to read them because I don't want to say them incorrectly. I want these students to be safe at home with their families. I don't want their parents, siblings, grandparents, and friends to spend the rest of their lives trying to make sense of the senseless. I want the 2 teachers, Ava and Irma, to still be chasing their passion in the classroom. Instead, they stepped in front of flying bullets. I want their families and friends to still have them to love. I don't want the classmates of those 19 children to have to live with such traumatic memory forever. I don't want their families to have to hold them through their nightmares. I don't want the police officers to have been sent into danger. I don't want the firefighters and paramedics to have seen such small, innocent kids in such physical pain. The list of things we don't want to have happened could go on forever. We could choose to be stuck in this pain forever, or we can find a little hope today and maybe a little more tomorrow. Let's hope for better, and in places where we are the surgeon, admissions committee member, or my first boyfriend, let's do better. That's the end of the passage. And so when I first read that, this is a problem. This is an issue. I went, what's shooting? Because unfortunately, that's a thing that happens way too often in this world. And I had to go up and look, and it was the shooting at the Olvade school in Texas. And then I remembered, I remembered the event, but I was like, how bad is it that I can't remember, the name of that school? Because it's just something that happens way too much. And I won't get into that. But, I mean, yeah, reading my words back, I was like, dang, we're still hoping for some of the same things. And I think that's life. There are certain misfortunes and types of evil that are recurring that we don't have control over, that we're never going to have control over. But yeah, that was the passage I wrote 3.5 years ago. And again, I say and as I think you hear me go through this episode, it's interesting to me as I read those words back and then am reading my notes to see how similar I still feel about this. And again, I put all this together before I even had remembered I had written that. And I was like, oh, dang, like I think I did an excerpt on that, found it. And so, yeah, that's been an interesting moment of reflection for me personally. But after hearing like the inspiration for why I wrote about this or why I wanted to bring this to the podcast and then reading those words, I think we'll just get right into the bulk of this episode. And the first thing I wrote down and the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that hope can be active. Hope can be proactive. Like we can do something with our hope. Hope isn't, I think it sometimes feels, because I think sometimes we associate the word hope with like moments of desperation where we feel out of control, right? It can be that like someone's very sick or something bad is happening in your life, or you lost your job, or you, whatever it may be. And it's these moments, these pits in our life where we're like, all you have is hope, right? That's all that you are allotted. That's all you have the energy to like exude, is just hope for more. But I think that it's important to understand the moments in life when we can do something about our situation. And I do think hope gives us that opportunity. It's not just, it is in the moments where you have nothing left and you feel like you have no energy, you're beat down, you're crying yourself to sleep. Like when all you have is hope. The only positive thing you feel like you have is hope. It's there, but it's also everywhere. And we can be, like I said, like proactive and like actionable about it. And for myself, at least, that always makes me feel better when I feel like there's something I can do to change my situation. I feel like I regain some power over it and I don't feel so victimized by what's happening to me. Okay, and then another thing I do, and sorry if this is your first episode, I'm just trying to like lay some of these things out. But I kind of try to break down these episodes into like where I've seen hope in the world and where I see it in my own life. And so where I saw it in the world this time was, and laugh at me if you want to, I don't care, this is something shameless about myself, I love Hallmark Christmas movies. They bring me joy. I love that I can predict them. I love that within the first 5 minutes, I know who's going to fall in love, who's going to be heartbroken, like what the arc is going to be, what the struggle is going to be, who's going to run the hot chocolate stand at the Christmas fair. Like you know what? It brings me joy. I like having the reliability of a Hallmark movie to just like ease some of the holiday stress. Okay. I want to apologize for that. And I was watching one the other day and it was, although I will say this year, it appears they're like getting into some different territory. They're like appearing to try, like to be attempting to kind of have like bigger conversations which I love. Like it's good to like get up with the times, but an interesting thing I've noticed. But anyway, I was watching an episode or a movie the other day and it took place in the hospital, and the like new nurse, no, she wasn't a nurse. Wow, how sexist of me. The new doctor was like falling in love with one of the paramedics, like ambulance drivers who brings the patients in. Very cute. And there was also like a romance happening with like someone in the police force. There was like crime, and so I'm telling you guys, they're getting into some different topics. But anyway, that's not really relevant. What's relevant was the conversation that one of the older doctors was having with this new doctor. And they were talking about like patient families and the holidays and all this stuff. And he says, sometimes all these people have is hope. They bring their loved ones in here and they hope that they get to leave with them. And it really hit me because I've lived that. And now, again, Hallmark movies are cheesy and predictable, but they will make you feel things. Like, do not knock it till you try it. Also, if you're sitting here making fun of me for watching those movies, watch one and tell me that you don't feel something, because you will. Anyway, and I was like, whoa, that's like such an articulate way to put that feeling, Hallmark. Okay, like I see you. And it made me think, and this is one of those ironic things that is like in reading back what I wrote 3 years ago, like also kind of shook me, because I thought about my grandfather who like a year and a half ago, I don't live where my family lives, and I got a phone call one morning, Katie, like, you need to come back here now and say goodbye to your grandfather. And I hopped on a plane, got there. I was there like a few hours later and fully did that. And for all like medical purposes, that was going to be the next step. He was very sick and on a ventilator and 90 something years old, like that. And it sounds, my grandpa listens, so I'm trying to use my words carefully. But I guess I was hoping he would come home somewhere. But again, like what I was seeing, there wasn't a lot of reason to hope in that moment. Now, obviously, somewhere I was and somewhere the rest of my family was. And a very miraculous thing happened. They were trying to, he needed to have a scan. And we decided, okay, let's see like what, or like my family, let's see what this scan has to say. And they said, well, to do that, we have to take him off the ventilator and kind of let's see what happens. Typically, you don't take someone of his age. Like it just, there was no medical reason to feel any other way than we were. Like my grandpa, like I said, he was like 95 at the time. Okay, so take him off the ventilator to have the scan done, and he, I mean, not really even exaggerating when I say he woke up and was like, "Hey guys," like kind of a very much not what anyone expected, right? And he's, I just spoiled the ending or the lack thereof. Like he is, I'll see him in 2 weeks. Like I saw him 2 weeks ago. I mean, that was not his time. Our hope was answered. We got to, he's been home since that day. Like pretty amazing story. And that's why that moment, like it really hit me. And I've had other moments with loved ones in the hospital that, quite frankly, I'm not going to get into here. I've said before on this podcast, a line that I use if this is your first time listening is like, some things are not for the internet. And like, there are things that are not for the internet because for various reasons, for in this situation, it's just something I've not worked through personally. So I don't want to bring it to the internet because it's not the internet's business. But I know that feeling very well of like, that's your hope. And for many times, what did I say in that passage? Like, I hoped my grandpa's life-saving surgery would go well, and it did. Like, I've learned that many times with him. And it was really interesting to like have that just hit me and kind of validate the word I'd been ruminating on, this word of hope for this upcoming episode while I was watching that Hallmark movie. Another personal connection I have with just that thing is the fact, I think I've said this on, or I know I've said this on here before. If you didn't catch that episode, I don't talk about it often because I don't like to, not that I don't like to talk about my past work experience. I just, because I'm not affiliated with those places, I don't want to be like seen like I don't know. I just feel like it's weird to talk about places I used to work when I don't work there anymore because I don't want it to seem like I'm being opportunistic or like talking about something for any reason other than something pure. But I used to work for a local children's hospital, and I worked for their foundation. So I worked in the fundraising department of the hospital, and we spent a lot of time within the hospital walls. And one of our kind of coined phrases, something that we, and then hear me when I say this, like something we sold, if you will, like to patient families and to investors and to funders and stuff, was this idea of hope, right? So many of these people, when it comes to the patient families, they're having their worst days and moments and weeks and months and however long that they're in there participating, receiving treatment from the hospital. That's their lowest low. And they have many days where all they have is hope. And there's hope for cures and treatments and solutions and all these things, right? And so the medical staff is providing that to patient families. Well, our job is to make sure that this medical staff has all the money that they need to turn over every rock and go as far down every path as they can no obstacles in their way. Find cures, find solutions, find treatments, find preventative things so that a lot of these bad things we see every day stop happening and don't happen to another family. And to do that, we obviously need the generosity of the community. And so that's when I say sell, like, but we promoted hope to everybody. And that was what we should have been doing. That is, I think, our best route to everyone getting what they wanted. But that was another reason why watching that silly little Hallmark movie, like, really made me think, because for a long time, that was what I did. That was professionally the, like, heartbeat of what we were trying to accomplish. And, like what that doctor said in the movie, like, these people are hoping their kids come home with them. That's different than me hoping my 95-year-old grandfather comes home with me. They're both, I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other. I'm just saying that's very different. That's a very different kind of hope and desperation. I'm sure. I'm not a mother. I can only imagine the difference of those feelings. And I mean, I've felt this with, I know I've talked on this podcast before, like, throughout this year about, like, the person I lost at the beginning of 2025, that we lost a extended family member. There was years of hoping that something would get figured out, or it would be different, or the realities what were occurring weren't happening anymore. Like, a lot of that, I think you go through things like that, in particular that event, and you're different. I feel different now than I did a year ago because of situations that made me feel a lot of things, for sure. One of them being, like, having a lot of those moments where you're laying in bed crying and all you have is hope, or the desire to want to hope. Sometimes you're so down and so exhausted and so worn out from what you're going through that it's like, I hope to hope. It's just, we've all felt those things. That is human. That is, and if you haven't felt them in that way because you haven't had that kind of, like, loss or bad things happen to you, then you can't relate to it in that way, I guess. And I don't wish those upon you, and I don't want to be sounding like a negative person being like, you will at some point. But yeah, just know a lot of people in your life have felt that way, and so have empathy for them when they're walking through those kinds of seasons if you personally haven't felt it before. But, like, thinking back to when I worked at the hospital too, I saw what we gave families who didn't get to take their children home. And that was even like a physical, just a tangible thing that really made you think and, like, gave you a lot of perspective. Something that I would at least do, and I know some of my colleagues did as well, is, like, if we were having or thought we were having a bad day, like a tough day at work, a long day, whatever, I would go, and the hospital has had a great cafeteria. Truly, the food was really good. That was actually, like, one of the primary goals when where I used to work, when they built this new campus, because obviously it's children who are in the hospital, therefore their family's gonna be with them, and they're gonna be with them all day. Their parents, their aunts, their uncles, their siblings, whomever. So they're like, these people need to have, like, really good quality food. And anyway, it's kind of a tangent, but I do think a good thing to focus on. And if anyone who's listening is in any sort of decision making for a children's hospital or a different hospital being built, focus on the cafeteria, focus on the food. So I was saying that I would go and I would go to the cafeteria to have my lunch break, because and it was a drive. I had to drive like 10, 15 minutes to get there, because it was forced perspective. I would look around. I remember this particular day, and I literally did an entire episode on this podcast about self-awareness. So that is something that I will pat myself in the back for. Like, I know when I need a perspective shift. I know when I need a reality check. So I would do this for myself. And this one day I was really stressed about something, and I'm sure something relevant in relativity to what I was going through. I was stressed out. And so I was having my lunch break at the hospital, and I was walking around, and I saw this child in a wheelchair being pushed by their parent. They were very clearly a cancer patient. I don't need to explain that to you, I don't think, as to how I knew that. And they were reaching into one of the, like, deli counter kind of, not deli counter, I don't know, refrigerated, like, things. I don't know what you would call those, but, you know, if you're, like, in line at Starbucks, there's the refrigerated little thing where you can grab a water or a snack or something. And they were trying, the child was trying to reach into there. Well, they couldn't because they were in the wheelchair, and they, like, could not physically reach far enough into it. And I think it was their mom, like, reached in, grabbed it, gave it to them. That wasn't a moment that I don't think really was sticking out to the people who were experiencing it, but it definitely stood out to me in a big way. And I remember thinking, you're not having a bad day, you know, and I'd like to, again, give myself a little credit for knowing that I was maybe getting myself overly worked up about something that I knew didn't matter in the way that it was making me feel, like, to the depths it was making me feel. So I went and gave myself some perspective. But, you know, that hope and the absence of hope and the yearning for hope was something I felt all the time working there. And it I can't really describe it. It's definitely one of those things that you had to feel, and if you felt it, you know, and if you don't, you just believe those who are sharing it with you. It's why I think the presence of hope in that kind of place is what made us successful, not only medically, like what those people were able to do, who are the true heroes of what gets accomplished at any place like that, but it's why we were able to be successful as fundraisers too, because everyone you're talking to, whether or not they've had a child who's been sick, but they've had a family member, or they've just felt that desperation feeling. Maybe they've only felt it when their relationship ended or something, but, like, we know what it feels like as humans. We can relate to each other over the same feeling, even if we've felt it in different ways, and different life experiences have brought us there. And that's really what I'm trying to do here with this podcast. So I just think this is one of those words where it, like, we're really talking, like, heart to heart. Sometimes I'm a little more thoughtful, and it's a little more heady, and it's a little more analytical. This is just like a conversation from the heart, hopefully talking to your heart. And yeah, I think hope is so important. And I've learned that so many times in my life. You know, I also thought about, like, I think about this in the terms, like, the experience I had at the hospital, right? We were, like I said, promoting hope. We hadn't found every cure. We couldn't stop every accident from happening. We couldn't prevent every illness, but we could provide people the hope that our staff would get it figured out, or would figure it out to the best of their ability, or they would put in measures so that it didn't happen to another kid, right? And that was a promise and a hope that we delivered to families and to donors. And I think that's really a lesson in, like, just life too, right? Like, we can't prevent every bad thing that happens to us or the people that we love. I wish we could sometimes, right? Because we'd be saving ourselves a lot of these moments of, like, despair and pain. We can't prevent every bad thing that's going to happen to us, or we can't prevent a bad day. But we can be like Orphan Annie, right? And promise ourselves to hope and know that the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and that we have hope for a better day or week or month or whatever. Like, we can hope for better things to happen. And you only know that there's better when you felt worse, right? It's one of those, like, complicated parts about just being human. Like, good's only good because there's also bad, right? So, and we love good, but we don't want bad, but one can't exist without the other. So having hope means that there's a presence of, there's something out of your control. There's something you want. There's something, and sometimes it's something out of your control. Sometimes I do think, like I said at the beginning, like, hope can be really active. we can do something about it. We can take our hope and make it actionable. Sometimes we can't. I think that's why hope is going to be a relatable word, and one that hopefully this is an episode that's like, good for everyone to listen to, because we can feel it all the time. You can feel it when things are going well too. You want more goodness. You want more good things. And I was thinking about Annie, the Orphan Annie, if you've seen that movie or musical. Hopefully you have. It's a great, I don't know what we call it, production film, all the things. It's just a great story. If you've never interacted with it, it's essentially the story of this orphan, and she's like lives in the orphanage, and she has this like upbeat, fun personality, like living amongst like so many struggles, and the people that run the orphanage or whatever they are, and she has this infamous scene where she's looking out the window and she sings that song, like the sun I won't sing to you, but the lines are, the sun will come up tomorrow, bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow, I don't know how the rest of it goes, but basically the point is like, yeah, today maybe sucks, but the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and that's good. And I can bet on that, and I can know that. And I thought about that when I was putting this episode together, because there's been so many times, I'm sure we all have felt that way, where it's like, I just, I'm not feeling the best, but I know the sun will come up tomorrow. I know the sun's going to rise. I know it's then going to set. You can bet on these certain things happening that provide you some sort of like anchors to allow yourself to hope, to allow yourself to know that there's potential for better. Like, today's bad, and that's true. Tomorrow can be a little bit better. That doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be good, but it can be a little bit better. I can hope that something about it will make it a little bit better than today. And I do this all the time. We all do, whether we're conscious of it or not, right? Like the story I told about my grandpa. I wasn't consciously hoping, and that's not because I wanted a different outcome. It's because I didn't know in that moment that was an option. There was nothing about what I was being told by professionals, what I was seeing with my own two eyes, like what I know about life, what the facts of the world are, and there wasn't any indication I should be hoping for something different. I was hoping for a lot of things that moment, but I don't know that I was hoping that he made a literally miraculous 180. That was a great surprise. I wasn't hoping for that. I was hoping for things for him, of course. But the reality of it ended up being better, than what I was hoping for in that moment. So yeah, so I think that's like a lesson too. Sometimes we're doing these things subconsciously. I hope for better things in my business and in my life every single day. If not, that'd be like a really boring way to live, to not be wanting more, yearning for more, trying for more, hoping for better. Like, that's constantly happening. We all should be trying to do that. We all should be wanting tomorrow to be better than today. Like, you should want your marriage to be better than your wedding day. You should want to like love your child more when they're 30 than you did the day that they were born. You should want to get smarter. You should want to find more success. You should want your relationships to be healthier. You should want to get closer to your friends. You should want to like be able to provide more and give more and do more. Or at least I think that. I feel that way. Like I said, every single day I hope for more and better things in my business and my life. And you know what else I do? I work at those things. I try. I do more things to make that. Look at what I'm doing right now. I now have the video for my podcast because I know that has the potential to reach more people, and I want more for this. I want more for myself. I want more for this project. I believe in this concept and what we're doing here at The Good Stuff so wholeheartedly, like with every fiber of me. So I'm doing something about it. I don't just hope it's good. I don't just sit around and, oh man, it'd be great if people heard this episode, heard like my thoughts, and not press record and not put it out there and not, run the risk of being misunderstood or disliked because I'm just hoping what's someone going to do? Knock on my door and ask to like start a podcast? No, I'd call the police. I wouldn't be like, yeah, that's a great idea. That's not how I would react to that situation, right? So you have to be actionable. In my business, I I mean, well, it got rescheduled, but I had, a new client call today because I want more. I want to be able to do more. I want to be able to help more. In my personal life, like there's things that I want, so I do something about it, right? I'm like not in a relationship, but if I see a cute guy at the bar, like I introduce myself. Like you have to do these things. I tell my friends that I'm like ready for that. Like you have to do these things. You cannot just sit around and wishing your life away. You have to take hope and do something about it. And I hope that that is being like seen in this episode. And you know what's cool about that is I can look back at my life right now and I can be like, there's things that I once only hoped for that I now have. That's awesome. That's really cool. That's encouraging for me to hope and want for more so I can feel that again with more things I'm proud of and more things that bring me joy and more people that bring me joy. Like having that awareness and perspective is really helpful and a good thing. And so look for that in your day. Look for tomorrow or today, depending on when you're listening to this. Maybe you're listening to this when it first comes out in the morning. You have all day. Think about something in your day that you get to do or someone you get to speak to or someone that you get to interact with or a thing that you have or the car that you're driving that you once only hoped for. If you're in a healthy relationship, literally tell your partner today, I'm like so grateful for you because at one point all I knew was to hope for you. If someone said that to me, that would be such a compliment. Say that to them and let me know how that goes and I'll say that to some of my friends. I'm so grateful that like I could only have hoped for a friend like you at one point in my life and I have you and I've had you. Or there's things in my life that I've been able to provide myself that I like only could have hoped one day. There's one of my horses I own, I bought with my own money. That is something that like brings me so much pride. And I, again, at one point in my life only could have hoped to do that. Like that is so cool. And you're only aware of that when you look back and go, wow, with the perspective of like at one point that was just a dream. And how lucky are we to live in a world where we can hope for more and can have that awareness. I guess like I want to wrap this up by just saying like, don't stop hoping. There's moments, we've all had the moments, or maybe you haven't, but if you haven't, have empathy for those in your life who have. Like we've had the moments where that's all you have, right? But you can also hope when things are good. Don't shy away from hoping and be like thinking like you can't do it when things are going well. Yes, you can. Like there's no reason you can't. We need it all the time. It is something that I think, like I said, like awards us the opportunity to just seep into a place of like positivity and yearning that helps, I have to think, helps how we feel about ourselves and our lives and like just as humans. So just don't stop. And if you ever need good perspective, like just know that there's things in your life that other people can only hope for. And at one point you could only hope for too. So as we enter kind of the holiday season, family time, all this, like, I hope that you can take this with you and that you get something really soon that you're hoping for right now. All right. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Good Stuff, and I will talk to you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Good Stuff. Your host is me, Caitlin Piggott. Follow The Good Word on Instagram at the.good.word.co and follow The Good Stuff podcast at the.good.stuff.podcast. To reach out about this podcast, email contact@thegoodwordonline.com. Graphic design work was done by Sugar Pine Design. The photo on my cover art was taken by Bella Claire Photography. And the intro and outro audio was done by David Nolf.